Hey everyone, this is Elise. Welcome to Beyond Conversations interview series with women who have it all. And if you are new to my work, my website is www.elise-n.com. Well, in this era, there's no need to use www anymore, but it's just I'm so used to it. But anyway, I help spiritual entrepreneurs um, help gain clarity in their marketing money mindset so that they can get their message out there in a much bigger way, serve more clients, make good money consistently to live the rich life they deserve. So today I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Jenni. Um, she's also a mother. She's a mother of three boys. I don't know how she does it. I'm a mother to three girls, and sometimes I go crazy. So I really don't know how she does it. So you want to stay and find out how she actually finds sanity, time, and energy to manage everything. And on top of that, a new business. Well, not so new. And a little bit about her, she actually transited from corporate to being a coach and now enjoying her life. And she told me she wished she had left corporate earlier. And so now let me introduce Jenni and bring her in, and so that we can grill her with all the yummy questions. It's gonna be so yummy, I promise. Welcome, Jenni.
Oh, hi, Elise. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us more about your um, tell us more about the process from not quitting to quitting. Maybe I should quit. Maybe I shouldn't quit. Maybe I should stay. What was that whole entire process for you?
So for me, I think so I was in corporate about 20 years, almost 20 years, like right from when I got out of college to like my mom got me a temporary job and, 20 years later, I was still working in the industry, in the electric industry. And I think I was in really deep denial for most of that until about, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago when I had, what I would call a spiritual awakening, where I just realized I was really stressed out. I was drinking too much, I was eating too much, I was like stressed out and angry and taking it out on my kids. And I went to see a kind of a doctor called a functional doctor, where they are very holistic. And I told her everything that was going on in my life, and she was like, "You have to change your life. Like you can't keep living like this." And I knew that intuitively. I was just sort of waiting for the right person to tell me. And so we decided this plan where I was going to reduce my stress, and I went on this yoga retreat for a week. And when I came back from the yoga retreat, I was like, I have to quit my corporate job. Like I really didn't even realize before I left. The trip was in Mexico. I was in such deep denial, but once I got to Mexico and I made the space, and it was a very spiritual retreat that I went on, where every day I just asked God to empty what was going on in my life and show me what to do. And when I came back, I was so done with my corporate job, I expected to be fired, like when I got home. But of course I wasn't, because I was good at it. And it probably took another 9 months of like figuring out like what I wanted to do and what kind of business I wanted to start, and getting the right kind of training and things in place before I actually was able to finally quit my job. It was about 9 months that process took, of like, should I quit? Should I not quit? How long should I wait? And getting the husband up to speed on all of that. Obviously, I come home from Mexico, I'm like, I'm going to quit my job. And he's like, what? So, yeah, yeah.
So what took you so long? I mean, in 9 months, and obviously you said,
Mhm.
I wish I quit earlier. So what
Yeah.
was that defining moment? You know what? Screw this. I'm just gonna do this.
Yeah, it was trying to get everything into place. Like I knew it was done, but it was trying to get just financially in place. I started working with some different mentors to figure out, with coaches, with a coach to figure out what I wanted to do. And I initially thought I was going to go back to school and get a master's, and then I hired a coach, and then I fell in love with that process. So then I decided to become a coach myself. So I went to a couple of different coaching schools, just wanting to get the certifications in place, and just waiting for bonus season. I hear that a lot from my own clients, waiting for that one more bonus. And then when I finally got that one more bonus, then I was able to leave. Yeah.
So it was the bonus, huh?
It was really the bonus. So then I actually had a wonderful boss who I went to in about 4 months before I left and said, look, I'm going to leave and I want to work it out the best for both of us. And so we worked out a plan. And that's kind of why it took as long as well, because he had to hire someone and I was trying to be accommodating because I didn't want to leave him in the lurch. But yeah, it was the bonus. It was the bonus. So yeah.
So tell us more about life after corporate now.
It's absolutely amazing, and every day it gets bigger and more expansive. Like I talk a lot about how when I was in corporate, and this is sort of sad to say, like I didn't really think that I enjoyed being a mom because I was so stressed and so overwhelmed trying to balance all of it that, when I finally left, like the longer I'm away from corporate, the more I enjoy being a mom, the more I'm able to relax and like enjoy the freedom and like enjoy picking my kids up from school and being able to really be present with them instead of always thinking about, oh, I've got this meeting tomorrow or this board presentation. So that's been the biggest thing. And then it's sort of like, do you remember when you got out of university and all of a sudden you're like, I don't have to study anymore? It's kind of like that. It's like, wow, I don't have to yeah, the freedom has been pretty amazing. Yeah.
So obviously we cannot just decide tomorrow we're going to quit and then we quit. So
Right.
there must be a plan. And I think, I mean, like what I said, if you enjoy being in the corporate, then by all means stay in the corporate because you need to leave. On the other side, if you realize in your heart of your hearts that, corporate is not a place for you and you don't, the corporate world doesn't deserve you, then you got to do something about it. But
Right.
yeah, people are afraid. So, would you like to give these people, I mean, it may be moms, I think moms have more emotional connection with it, like women,
Mhm.
men, any practical steps to take to not overwhelm and freak yourself out and then give up on your dreams? It's,
Yeah.
of course, if we take one big step, then we may freak out, but are there any practical steps that you can offer, give?
Sure. I do a talk like 5 questions to ask yourself before you quit your job. And so it's like, have a plan, some kind of a plan. And it doesn't have to be like a business plan laid out according to like an MBA model, but have some kind of a plan, some sort of target market research so that you know what you're getting into. And then you need to think about how much money do you have, how long it will last you. Like, as you know, when you're an entrepreneur, like you're in bed with your money, right? It's like you're completely intimate with how much money you have in the bank at any time. And like that's sort of like, I think in corporate you get sort of used to the corporate credit cards and you get sort of detached from your money. So know how much money you have and how long you can last. And then, absolutely I tell women like, is this something that you absolutely have to do? Like you feel like your life won't be fulfilled if you don't, because if you don't have that kind of passion when you go into your own business, like you can't sustain it because it is definitely, it is an ebb and a flow and you're riding those waves of uncertainty and so definitely you have to be attached to your passion and why you're doing it. And it has to be like, I absolutely must do this with my life. And then realize that there's no perfect time, just like having a baby, right? It's like you just go for it it's all about faith and trust and trusting in something bigger than you, that you're being called
Yeah.
to do some work in the world. Yeah.
So, I mean, if we were single, it would be so much easier to have that conversation because it's I, me, and myself. But you have a husband and you have
Yes.
children. So tell
Yeah.
us, was it difficult to bring it up to your husband? Like, hey, I'm going to quit my job and go after my dream. What was the conversation like?
It was and it wasn't. Like I was so unhappy for so long and so unhealthy that at first of course he was like, you're gonna do what, like you what, because I had a 6-figure corporate job, like I made great money and I had great bonus and but I just I came to him in all sincerity, like I can't do this anymore, and I felt very strong, very powerfully, that I was being called by something bigger than me to do some work in the world. And I've had that calling since I was a little girl, felt that God had a plan for me. And so, like, that was sort of the getting used to it too, like why it took as long as it did, because it was him like, okay, okay, okay. And now, like, he's all in and we're in it together. And he's my biggest supporter. And he always talks about how I'm his inspiration. And he's also, like, in the middle of, making over his life as well, and has made huge changes, which I hope that have been, a result of the work that I've done.
Awesome. So you said you had to leave your six-figure income. Was that hard to do?
Yes. Of course it was.
You were not, I think most people do not leave. It's not because they don't know what to do or they don't know what they desire, but it's the security of stable income. So were there any fears around, like, okay, oh my God, if I start my business all from scratch, I would not be able, what if I cannot make that six-figure income again? Were there any fears, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, absolutely. There were fears about that from me, from my husband, from my whole family. Like, what are you doing? But, that's just the faith piece of it. Like, I felt like I was being called, and it was, there was a big trade-off for me, like the stress level and the emotional level, like to walk away from the money. Like, eventually, it's not worth the money, right? Eventually, if it's toxic enough and unhealthy enough, it's not worth the money. But that's the faith piece of it. And the bottom line is there's no such thing as security. You can get laid off tomorrow. You can, heaven forbid, be hit by a car on the way to work. Like, getting out of bed is an act of faith. And so it's just realizing that, and, like, letting go and believing that, that the business will come, and that I would be able to replace that income.
hmm So
Yeah.
now being an entrepreneur, a full-fledged one, congratulations for a while. What is the number one lesson that you have learned
Ooh.
from corporate?
It's number one lesson. I think two things. Like, I always go back to the faith piece, right? That, like, it is like it's this ebb and this flow, and that sort of, like, in realizing that's just the nature of life, right? Life is always changing. It's, like, it's great one minute, it's bad the next. The only thing you can count on is it's going to change. And so just being able, open, and surrendering to that process, and doing all, and being available to manage that emotionally, and the fear, and the anxiety, and the expectations that you have, like, really. And that's why, for me, yoga and meditation are, like, every day. Like, they help me keep all that in check and keep my brain in check. And then the other thing is just, you want to be your own boss, right? That's sort of like what everyone wants to. Well, then you are your own boss, and then ultimately, then the buck stops with you. And so it's just learning to internalize all that structure, instead of, like, having to be in an office 8 to 5 with deadlines. Like, the only thing that matters at the end of the day is whether or not you show up for yourself. Like, if you want to make money and be successful, it's all up to you. There's no passing the blame to anybody else. So that was a big transition, because even though I had worked from home for, like, the last 7 years in my corporate job, still it was a step further to be like, all right, if I don't get things done, it doesn't get done. So. Like, it's just me here. So, yeah.
The personal responsibility piece.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
talked about the surrendering part. I feel it's easy to say, like, surrender and have faith. So
Yeah.
are there any specific steps that you actually, or any ritual that you take to surrender? Like, when shit hits the fan, like, okay, I'm going to surrender, I'll let it, and then just take
Yeah.
faith. So are there any steps or mantras that you personally use to keep that faith strong?
Sure. So I have a daily I practice a little bit of Kundalini yoga and a little bit of Hatha yoga. So Kundalini, for me, it's right over there. I have an altar. I sit in front of it every day, and I chant. I sing to God, and that, I'll do sort of different things every day. But, like, when the shit hits the fan for me, it's like It's actually it's a bit of a Bible verse. It's be still and know, which is be still and know that I am God. Is the rest of it, and that's just what I say in these moments when I'm like, when you feel like you can't breathe. It's just be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that God is with me and that He is taking care of me in every moment, and that the plan is unfolding perfectly as it's supposed to, even though in my little human view, it may seem like the shit's hitting the fan. It's actually all part of the big plan.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you mentioned God, that I am
Mm-hmm,
God,
mm-hmm.
I am part of
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
and I feel like this is a, a lot of people feel God is outside them,
Yeah.
and but we co-create with God. We are given free will, and people blame God, like, why you didn't take care of me, blah blah blah. But they don't realize that they actually have unconsciously probably have chosen this,
Right.
right? So, and that brings to our topic, our favorite topic on spirituality.
Yeah.
So I was asking you, was it really hard to practice spirituality and be spiritual while in corporate?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was definitely, and I never heard, but spiritual closet, right? It was definitely like, and I was in the electric industry, so very conservative, but not very religious, but I wouldn't say very spiritual at the same time. And so it was definitely this sort of separation of church and state, which is like a very American thing, right? Like we don't, like church and state, church and business don't mix. And so there was definitely no like talk of God. We didn't talk about God. We don't have Christmas parties, right? We had holiday parties. It was definitely like this separation. And even the people who were, religious, like they weren't people like me. Like they didn't meditate, they didn't practice yoga, they didn't, wear malas or have Buddha statues. Like I'm sort of, to me, it's sort of all good. Like I say God, but to me, it's like it's just the universe. It's just the divinity that exists in everything. So yeah, it was definitely, and I still struggle with it. The longer that I'm gone, the more open I'm like, oh, okay, I can talk about it. I can be who I am, and I'm even in my business being more and more spiritual in my business. At first, when I came out, like I wasn't talking about it a whole lot, and now it's so important to me that I'm like, this is the woman that I want to work with. I want to work with women who are spiritual and spiritually awakened and open to, well, who realize how important it is to like making life transformations.
So, since getting out of the spiritual closet, how has
Yeah.
it impacted your business? I mean, I shared the same. I was sharing with you early on when I started, I was very spiritual, and then somebody said, or people were telling me, you cannot be so spiritual.
Yeah.
It sort of like helped me because then I got into psychology side of it, and then
Mhm.
I was going after my dreams and then making money, the making money process, and I lost that spiritual side. So this
Yeah.
year, I started to embrace it again, and my business took off. It's like I'm in the flow right now. It's not so much of the resistance. So I'm sure that's the case, the same case for you. So share with us that process. How has it been like?
Yeah, it's very similar. When I first started my business, like I was like, don't talk about woo woo, don't talk about spirituality. Like, my Facebook page is Jenni Bevill, find an Om of your own, which is like Om is the divinity in all of us. And and the feedback that I was getting was like, well, don't talk about that. You're gonna, scare people away. I was like, and I went along with that, and then, and my business wasn't taking off, and I felt very disconnected and disingenuous to who I was, and finally I just said, I'm not going to do it anymore, and I've just said I'm going to be who I am, and like, I really felt like this was the message that I was supposed to preach. Like, I think the world is thirsty for more spirituality in whatever form is comfortable for people. So, like, as I continue to bring it more and more into my work, into my messaging, like you, it's like things are really starting to take off, and people are really connecting to it, and so it's been really amazing and very affirming to that choice to honor who I am, which is what I want to tell them. That's the whole point, I think, of all coaching, is for women to be themselves, right? Like fully and completely.
So what do you feel about what's the definition of spirituality to you? I mean, the difference between, when we talk about God, do you get, I get it all the time, like, are you Christian? Are you Catholic?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we get mixed
Mm-hmm.
up, but I say, when I say spirituality, I believe in everything, like
Right.
all
Yeah.
religion. So,
Yeah.
what's your take on spirituality and religion?
To me, so spirituality is just the belief that there's something bigger than us that like takes care of us and that we're all connected to. Like whatever, one of my yoga teachers is like God, Buddha, or Mickey Mouse. Like whatever you want to call it, I don't care. It's just this idea that we're not alone in the universe. I think that's like at the at the base of it. And I have all different kinds of teachers and readings that I follow, from Buddhism to Kundalini to Sikh to even Christianity and Baptist and Catholicism. Like I'm open to all of it. I was raised Southern Baptist, and so which is very strict and very like it's my way or the highway. And so when it comes to organized religion, anybody that tries to tell me it has to be a certain way or I'm going to burn in hell like that, I don't find that I push back against. But I'm very open that everybody's path is different. Everybody's path to God is different, whatever God is called for them.
So we talk a lot about God, right?
Yeah.
And it's and we talked about faith. So I feel personally even I go through it. I feel it's sometimes hard to trust God because we cannot feel and touch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
I can see you now, I trust that you're here, right? You can
Yeah.
trust that
Yeah.
I'm here. But God, He can appear in any shape, form, or size, however that He decides. That's why it's so hard to trust
Yeah.
Him.
Yeah.
Are there any particular exercises that you do or practice, or what do you do when you feel like you're doubting Him? Like, are you here? Are
Mhm.
you really here? Are you really here to help me?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So, well, I've talked already about, the chanting and the meditation, and that definitely helps me connect. I also have little rituals that I do before I open my eyes, before I get out of bed in the morning, where I do different things where I connect with God and surrender every morning, like to God, so like the Virgin Mary and to my own soul. Like I go through this whole process of that. But that's just sort of the trick of it is like really reconnecting even in all those moments. And that's really what faith is like even when you can't see, even when you don't know, like that's faith. That's the moment that you choose. It is a choice to say I'm going to believe even though I can't see what happens. I'm going to choose anyway. And certainly I have moments where I'm like, God, I need a sign. Like one of my favorite things is um, I've done this since I was in high school. Like I'll be like, okay, God, I'm gonna turn on the radio, and if a good song is on, then like that's a sign, and so I'll turn it on. Like yeah, but so there's that. But there's also been like in my life, so many times I've had like miracles, like magic things, coincidences happen where it's been so obvious to me this is the divine showing up, and so just remembering those times when I feel disconnected and like. Yeah, but faith is like most of life. Faith is a choice. Like that's what the definition of faith is. It's like even when you can't see it, you choose to believe it anyway.
Struggling is a choice too, no? Faith.
Trusting is absolutely a choice too. It absolutely is. Yeah, yeah.
So we talked about spirituality and how would what if we are conscious that we are spiritual,
Hmm.
right? And you want to
Right.
work with spiritually awakened people. So how would people know that they are spiritual? Because they may not necessarily connect with the word spiritual, but the things that they practice
Hmm.
are
Hmm.
spiritual to us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Because I do meet with women, and I'm like, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I do that," and they don't really think of themselves like that. But I find that women who sort of like telltale signs. I think women starts to go through a process, like where they start to like sort of take care of themselves physically first, like they get sort of their health in order, and then they might start to dabble in yoga, and then it's like yoga's sort of like a gateway, right, to like getting into more spiritual.
All the law of attraction.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I think the law of attraction has helped us in our own
Hmm.
work. That opened a lot of doors for us. So,
Right.
how has law of attraction helped you?
So, excuse me. So, I think definitely calling in clients, and it's amazing when you call in clients and whatever they're going on in their life is a reflection of what you've been working on, and pulling in those people. But also, like my husband, I definitely like law of attracted him in. Like I know, I did, like we knew each other for many years before we started dating, and then I was like, I think this is a man I'm supposed to be married to. And it took several years, but then finally I was like, no, this is a man I'm supposed to be married to. And like we started dating, and 2 years later we were engaged and got married. So like that happens. And then also I think pulling in the right mentors for me, like the right coaches, like being open to like, I need someone to help me with this, and who's the right person, and like they will show up, almost every time.
Awesome. So I know you. I mean, this is a bit of a digress, but you talked about you are a recovery alcoholic.
Yes, yes.
I was too. I was
Really?
yeah. When I was, I think, can't remember, when I was 15, I got into drugs, and then when I went to work, when you're
Yeah.
legal, and then you start to abuse your own responsibility. So I
Yeah.
was in that abusive relationship because I don't really love myself and I wanted attention. So talk to me
Yeah.
about that journey. How has it been like for you? What happened? Why did you turn to alcohol?
Yeah. I mean, so I've actually quit drinking twice. The first time was in my early 20s, and the first time ever I had a drink was I was probably in early in high school. Like in ninth grade, I was probably like 12 years old, 12 or 13 years old. Yeah, really young. And my brain, I've always been prone to anxiety
How
and.
access to alcohol? Your parents were drinking?
No, they weren't drinking. It was just out with kids, like had older friends who had cars, and we would be out, and like they would somehow somebody would get somebody's older brother or somebody would buy them beer or wine coolers. This was back in like 1985, right? This was like a long time ago. And I remember the first time I ever had a drink, like I think I felt normal for the first time in my life, right? Like I had like the anxiety was gone, and I felt like everybody else did. And then and I've always just had sort of an addictive personality where I would turn to alcohol or food or shopping instead of like actually feeling my emotions. And so alcohol became a
Shopping
big
is a
part
big
for
thing,
me.
actually. Shopping.
Yeah.
Women can be addicted to alcohol, or I think, frankly speaking, it takes a lot of guts to actually do the funny things that we did. But most women are addicted to shopping. So that's an
Yeah.
addiction. You may think, oh, Jenny and Elise, we're not like them. But if you are addicted to shopping, yes,
Yeah.
you are the same gang.
Exactly, exactly. It's whatever. Like if you're in the moment and you don't want to be there, it's like whatever it is to like divert you from. So if it's booze, if it's like pizza, or because food is a big one too, or like I need to go buy a new coach first, right? Like it's all that same thing. It's anything just to like stop feeling the emotion, or to bury. For me, it was burying emotions for a long time. I did that even when I went about 12 years without drinking, but I put on a lot of weight, and was in a unhealthy marriage, and finally like got myself healthy, lost all this weight, and like within a few months like left my husband, right? Because I was in such denial about like how unhappy I was.
So what was the second time of your that alcoholic journey? You said two times, right?
Yeah, yeah. So early in my 20s, I quit drinking, and then stayed sober for about 10 or 11 years, and then remarried to the man I'm married to now. He is the love of my life. and I didn't drink, but he did, and so just like over time, it really wasn't. Absolutely, I can't blame him. Like it was all about me, and it was all about my job, and all about my internal work that I had not done. Like eventually, I started drinking again, and I drank for about 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, for about 3 years until I finally realized I couldn't do this anymore, and it was very unhealthy. And I've been very open about this. Like I'm not proud, but I drank in front of my kids, and it was. I still think about it, and it's very painful, for me to think about. But it's also part of my story. And when I share with the women, like we want to be good moms, but we have to take care of ourselves. And I was so unhealthy in so many ways, and not caring for myself, that I was incapable of caring for my children.
I think that's the common theme for moms. Like they put everyone else's needs ahead of theirs,
Right.
and then they become really unhappy, and they weren't given the permission, or they didn't know that they can
Yeah.
take care of themselves first. That's why there's so many unhappy moms and unhappy children, unhappy husbands. So it
Yeah.
all begins with us. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So what was your process of waking up? Like, how was that journey for you? Like, what happened? Like, okay, you know what? I'm not gonna do this anymore. I mean, 3 years is a long time. What was that
Yeah.
step for you?
Yeah. It was, I mean, I think it helped that I had quit before, so there was sort of a shortcut, but it was sort of a slow sort of waking up, and there were some things that happened, some sort of huge wake up calls that happened in my marriage between my husband and I. And when some of them happened, one in particular, I'm not going to go into details on this one, but we had a rather traumatic event happen in our marriage. And that was really the moment when I was like, everything's going to change. I've got to get my shit together. Like, I'm going to have to sober up and take care of myself. And that was sort of triggered the whole process. And then it was probably about 9 months after that when I started doing some reading, and I started like trying to do some more of the personal growth work again. And I connected with, she's my mentor now. Her name is Christina Rilo. She wrote Madly in Love with Me. She's an amazing woman. Connected with her, and then also read another book, You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. It's a great book. And so it started like this idea that I could change my life, and then it just sort of slowly built and built. Obviously, I had a great therapist during all this time who was, like, take care of yourself. And then finally, like I said, I went to see this functional doctor she's an amazing woman. And I went in and I told her everything that's going on in my life, and she looked at me and she said, you can't do this anymore. You have to change your life. And I already knew that, but I just really needed someone to look me in the eyes and say that. And like I said, when this happened, it was about 6 weeks before I had already booked a yoga retreat to Mexico. And so we came up with this plan. We called it Between Now and Mexico, where I was going to like taper off of my drinking, go to Mexico, in this very spiritual place, commit to myself and to God, and come back and be sober. And so I did that. And then I went out after I met with her. I bought a laptop. I started a blog. I started like chronicling the process of me trying to quit drinking and going to Mexico. And that was sort of the start of all of it. And then I went to Mexico. And like you talk about miracles, like every day there were like, manifestations of God showing me signs in my life of like amazing things happening, that like I was on the right path and this is what I was supposed to do. And then it was when I came back and said, all right, I've got to change my life. What do I want to do? And I knew I wanted to be a writer, and I knew I wanted to teach yoga. And then I knew there was something else, and that something else turned out to be life coaching.
So
Yeah,
basically, what I got from your message is okay to ask for help. It is not a
absolutely.
sickness. You need support. We need that support. It is okay to get a therapist. It does not mean that we are cuckoo. And
Yeah.
and as mothers especially, you need to spend that money. I think with moms, they are selfish, not selfish, they're stingy with themselves. Like, I don't want to spend this money, I want to keep it for my kids and blah, blah, blah. So they refuse to spend that money on themselves. They refuse to invest in themselves. They refuse to see their worth. So what you're saying is, when you invest in yourself, it's okay to invest in yourself. It's okay to get support. It's okay to be cuckoo as well.
Exactly, exactly. I saw Danielle Laporte, who wrote the Desire Map. She spoke at my yoga studio a few weeks ago, and she said, it takes a village to keep my shit together, So like this idea, like I have a therapist, I have a coach, I have all these people to help me, like be accountable and to keep my life moving forward. Absolutely. And, I think sometimes it's a cop out, right? It's an excuse that we use. Like, one of the first things that I learned in this process was like, it's never about time and it's never about money. Like, whenever we say we don't have the time or the money, those are both excuses because, we find both for what we really want to do. Like, it's 10 o'clock at night here in Texas and I'm on this interview, like, because I want to do it because it's important to me. So, yeah, absolutely. Women need to invest in themselves.
You talked about in alignment, living in alignment, right? So tell more about what you feel about living in alignment and what happens if you're living out of alignment. To first identify that you are out of alignment. So how do we do that?
Yeah, well, I think that for most women, the biggest way. So I'm working on a new e-course called The 7 Choices of a Highly Fulfilled Woman, and it's tied to the 7 chakras, which are the 7 energy centers that we have in our body. And there are certain personality aspects of ourselves that are tied to each one, like our first chakra, self-confidence, and then it goes up. And so I talk about this. So I talk about the importance of really working on all these aspects of ourselves. And I'm doing this because you need practice yoga, right? The chakras are up and down the midline, but this is your core. This is your spine that holds you upright. And, I have this image that I use of like a woman is sitting in meditation and she's sitting upright, and like above her, are all the things, all the balls that we have in the air, all the support, our children, our house, our jobs, our husbands that we have to support. And if we're not in alignment in ourselves, like we can't support all that. Like we're like the pole that holds up the tent for everything else. So it's all these pieces that we have to work on ourselves. And when we're out of alignment, that's when we're doing things like we're overspending, right? We're over drinking, we're overeating. I know when I get out of alignment, like I feel myself physically leave my body and like go entirely into my head, right? Like, and women do that a lot. We get really disconnected from ourselves. Women who have, no sense of boundaries or too rigid boundaries. Women who are jealous or narcissistic or possessive, like all of these things, are overeating, or like even people who are overactive and like exercise too much and are really thin, as opposed to also women who are couch potatoes and can't get off the couch. Like all of these are like just either deficiencies or excessiveness in these different aspects of our personality.
So it's interesting you talked about chakra, because a lot of spiritual people, they are very balanced here, like what's it called? The crown chakra.
Crown chakra, right.
Open, the crown chakra is really healthy, because I was like this. And then the base chakra, which is the business part, you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with it.
Yes.
So the mess, on the other side is the opposite. The base chakra, the root chakra, is really grounded. It's a lot about the money, but the spirituality side, the crown chakra, is not balanced.
Right.
So for the spiritual people, how do we then work with the base chakra, the root chakra, to balance ourselves? Because too much spirituality, you're not living in a mountain. You keep
right. Exactly. Yeah, and you meet those people who are very airy and they're like, and everything is great. But yeah, and so it is being grounded, and part of it is, physical exercise is really very grounding. Like jogging or running, or like yoga is a great way, like a really physical hatha practice is a great way to reconnect your head and your body. And those are sort of the biggest things I would say.
I feel like those people who are really airy-fairy, they seem airy-fairy, that's their persona, but actually they are hiding and avoiding something even deeper.
Absolutely, yeah, because the root chakra, it's grounding. It's also like, your sense of security. It's like, your place in the world, and it's sort of like they feel like they don't have the right to be here. In my writing, the what I associate with the first chakra is our sense of self-worth. like our value, and that we have a right to be here and take up space in the world. And so it's working on that aspect of ourselves that can help us also feel more grounded and feel like I have a right to be here. I have a right to be on this planet at this time.
Do you feel like it's actually easier the other side if you are very healthy in the base chakra, the root chakra, and then move up the ladder versus the other way around? I feel it's actually easier if you're.
I think with most people, most people are like spend most of their lives dealing like in the first three chakras for sure, like the root chakra or their core, their willpower, definitely. And that it's much easier, like, it's not easier once you get up there. But I would also say, anybody who's very masculine and very like closed off to any sort of spirituality could be stuck down there forever, right? And never be able to connect with something bigger than them. So
I think either ways they're like in a denial, sort of.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just resisting something that's beautiful.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. So, do you have any tips for us to be fearless and come out of the spiritual closet and to live the life that you desire and deserve?
Yeah. The thing that I work on most is just, be happy, be you, and realize that happiness is a choice. And I have people that look at my life and they're like, oh wow, and I'm sure you get this, oh wow, I wish I had your life. You have such a great life. And I'm like, I chose this life. Like I made the big scary decisions that anybody could make, and anybody can do those. And it's all about having faith, and it's really about like the story that we tell ourselves. And like if we can be aware of the fact that we're telling ourselves a story about a situation, um, uh, that we can actually choose to believe something else. And we have judgments about the way a thing has to be, or we feel like we don't have choices, and we always have choices. We always can choose to be happy. We can choose to, like, even when the shit hits the fan, doesn't mean you can't be happy, right? It's just, okay, this is happening, and I'm not going to have a judgment about it. I'm just like, okay, it'll be better tomorrow. Yeah. But I think just come back to the fact that, like, it's a choice. This is your life. This is all you got. Like, maybe there's reincarnation, maybe there's not. I don't know. But, like, this is it. So choose to be happy. Choose to tell yourself a story of empowerment and love.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenni, for being on the show with us. And it's so motivating. I mean, I'm out of corporate for a long time, but I can still feel it when people tell me they want to leave, they're afraid, and there's so many excuses. So, you have given us a lot of functional and practical tips that we can use to take one step towards our dream. And where can we find you, Jenni?
I'm on the internet, jennibevill.com, JenniBevill, and also on Facebook, Jenni Bevill, Find an Om of Your Own.
So what's the free gift that you have for us? Tell us.
The free gift that I have for us, and if you go to my website, you can sign up for it. It's an e-course. It's a 7-day e-course on the 7 choices of a highly fulfilled woman, where I teach you, if you've never heard of the chakras and you get freaked out about it, don't worry. Like, it's baby steps. But, I just talk about the 7 choices that we make to, like, be living in alignment, and how we can take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our families.
So who is this e-course good for in particular?
It's for women who want to have it all. It's for women who want to be highly fulfilled. They want the money, they want the career, they want the family, they want to be living their passion. It's to help women to do that. It's for women who want to trust themselves and to choose to be happy.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, and I'm so grateful for technology, and I'm here in Texas, and we could do this. So go check Jenni out. She's really awesome. Once again, she's a mother of 3 boys. So if she can do it, then there's absolutely no excuses why the rest of us cannot be fulfilled. Yeah?
That's right.
Joining us, and go check Jenni out. And this is Elisan signing out. Bye.
Bye.